Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Lauren, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my top 4 tips for organising your sewing and dressmaking supplies. So those of you that regularly watch my videos might notice that I'm in a bit of a different area just now, different background behind me. Normally I film all of my videos in my shop, but today I am in the sewing area, which is in my house. So despite having the studio above the shop where we do all of our workshops, which is a big open space for sewing, I actually do all of my sewing at home, and the area that I do it in is quite a multifunctional area. So it's where my computer desk is, where I mainly work on the computer and run the business from. It's where I do my sewing. It's also where I have like a little sort of mini studio area where I take lots of photos and videos. And it's also my kids' play area and a bit of a music room. There's a piano in this area too. So there's a lot going on here, and I have to try and sort of keep it organised and be able to kind of tidy things away so that I feel a little bit sane. And if you do a lot of sewing and dressmaking, you'll know that it does accumulate a lot of things. And it can sort of take over the house, especially if you don't have a dedicated like craft or sewing room where you can have everything in there and close the door. If you have to sew in a shared space, or you have to store sewing stuff in various parts of the house, then having it organised and knowing where stuff is really helps the creative process, I find. So after all of the lockdowns over the past couple of years, whatever, and COVID times and homeschooling and having another baby, and yeah, I guess just general life, I kind of felt like the open planness of my house and this multifunctional area that I use had sort of got a bit out of control. It was a bit overwhelming, and one sleep deprived morning I googled something or other and I came across a lady, lovely lady called Victoria, who is the founder of a company called A Tidy Mind, and that company provides tidying and organising services to a whole range of different people, different circumstances all over the UK, and they have like different team members who sort of cover different areas of the UK. So Victoria covers the area that I live in, and I got in touch with her first of all really so that I could get help with the kids' toys, which were just literally all over the house everywhere and very chaotic, and it was really starting to become quite overwhelming for me. But the things that I learned through going through the sort of process of kind of tidying and organising stuff, the principles that I learned from her actually really helped my sewing supplies and how I sort of organise all of my things. So I thought that you would really love to hear what those tips were, and that you could maybe bring some organisation to all of your fabrics and your sewing things and your haberdashery and everything. In terms of full disclosure and transparency, I did pay in full for Victoria's services with A Tidy Mind, and there was no sort of obligation for me to share any part of that journey that I went through with her at all, but I just felt that it was really useful for me in terms of how I then organised all of my sewing stuff. So I thought that it would be useful for you guys to hear that too. So here are my top 4 tips for getting yourself organised. So the first one is categorise. So what you need to do is choose a category of things that you are going to go through first of all. So it might be all of your fabrics, it might be the sewing patterns, it might be tools and equipment and sort of haberdashery items. So for example, if you were going to do fabrics, so this is what I did when I started off organising everything, was get every single bit of fabric from wherever you keep it or hide it in your house. So it might be, some might be under your bed, some might be in a cupboard, wherever. Any bit of fabric, any size. So if you keep scraps, then get all of them together as well, and you just need to get everything in one big pile, and then you're going to categorise it out. And how you do that might depend on what you have and how much you have. So your categories don't need to be the same as mine. The way I separated out was by fabric type. So I had a pile for jersey, pile for sweatshirting, pile for linens, piles for lightweight cotton, pile for denim, pile for wools and sort of coating fabrics. So you could choose your own categories And at this point, you are not at the stage of deciding what to do with it yet. You're literally breaking down each category into more manageable chunks. So if you were doing your sewing patterns, then it might be you put all of your tops in a big pile, bottoms like skirts and trousers, or you might have one for skirts, one for trousers, dresses, and so on. So you can choose what categories and how you break things down. I also did the same for all my tools and notions. So I got all of my kind of haberdashery bits and bobs, and I had all of my chalks, all of my measuring tapes. I discovered that I actually had about 5 measuring tapes, but I only ever use one. All of my scissors together, and so on. So the principle in this first stage, this first tip, is just picking a subject that you're going to categorise and separate it out into categories. Okay, tip number 2 is to then declutter. So you have to take each category that you have sectioned out, and then this is where it starts to get a bit hard, because you have to decide what you're going to do with it. Now, I did start to find this process quite hard, because I'm one of these people that think, oh, I'll keep it just in case, I don't really know what I'll do with it, but I'll keep it just in case for the future. And it does obviously mean that you accumulate quite a lot of stuff. So try to think to yourself, do I still actually really love this or like it as much as I used to when I first got it? Does it have a specific use? Do I have something similar already? So it might be that you realise you've actually got 3 bits of cotton lawn that are all small flowery prints. So then you might start to think, actually, do I need all of them? Or can I just pick one favourite one? So if you're finding it hard to put things in the get rid pile, or you're maybe feeling guilty about it, what really helped me was to start to weigh up 2 things. So it's either going to be hard to get rid of it, or you've got the hardness or the sort of difficulty and challenge of having to keep it, store it and look after it, stop mothballs from eating it, stop moths from eating it, and just have it in your possession, look after it. So the challenge of that versus the challenge of getting rid of it and doing something else, like maybe gifting it to someone else, or it having another purpose, and what is more inconvenient. The other thing that really helped me to think through in this stage was how easy it would be to replace something that I got rid of. So thinking like, what is the worst case scenario? I get rid of something and then I later think, I really wish I could have kept that. And if it's quite easy to replace for whatever reason, then is it worth really keeping it and having the effort of having to keep it and store it and look after it? Is that effort harder than just actually replacing it in the instance you did need it in the future? Because you might not need it, but if you did, and it's quite easy to replace it, then actually maybe it's better just to get rid of it in the short term. And this really helped. Thinking about that really helped when I came to sort out my PDF patterns that I had printed. So if I had made a pattern in the past that was a printed PDF and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it at all again, or I knew that I wasn't going to make it in the immediate future anyway, like potentially maybe one day I might make it, but I wasn't going to be making it, in the next couple of years, say, then I've got the PDF electronic file, then actually just recycling that pattern and that paper and getting rid of it is easier than trying to keep it when actually I could just get it reprinted anytime I wanted to, if I needed to. So yeah, have a think about how easy it is to replace something. If you're looking for ideas in terms of what to do with fabric, for example, or other supplies that you might have, quite often people will do de-stash accounts on Instagram, or it might be that you've got like a sewing Facebook group maybe where you can do like de-stashing, and you can sell those fabrics to other people in the sewing community, or give them away, or give them to a sewing friend. Or it might be that actually you just want to recycle it. So if you've been keeping tiny little scraps and you think, I'm really not going to do anything with this, then you can check. Some charity shops will then put that into like the fabric recycling process, and that will get sort of recycled. Or it might be that you just donate the bits of fabric to a charity shop, and then they'll sell them as a bit of fabric. So yeah, if you can sort of think of various moving on points, then it might be easier to think and that you can part ways with it, and that actually it's having a greater purpose than life. It's going to fulfill its destiny in another way, other than just sitting in your cupboard or under your bed for another however many years. Okay, so once you have decluttered and you're left with a pile of things that you are going to keep, then my third tip is assigning a home to these items and then knowing your limits. Now again, this will be really individual for everyone because everybody's going to have different space availability to them. So if you've got a dedicated sewing or craft room, it might be that you have a whole sort of unit or area or shelving bit that you can have lots of fabrics in. Or if you actually sew in a shared space, it might be that you just have one cupboard somewhere. And for me, my fabric stash, I decided to allocate, it was like a tall cupboard in my kind of living area where all of my fabric stuff was going to be. And it's important that you sort of decide on what that limit is and what that's going to be for you and stick to it. Now, part of sticking to it is that you have to start being quite strict about what comes in and out. So if you know where your limit is of where you're going to keep a certain type of item, is that say then you get a nice new bit of fabric and you're not immediately going to be starting to sew it straight away, you're going to have to store it somewhere. You have to put it somewhere in your house. And if your area where you keep your fabrics is already full and you can't fit that bit of fabric in, then it might be time to look through the fabrics that you've got there and see if any can be moved on either into your projects pile and you actually start using it and working with it, or it moves on to another purpose and has another life elsewhere. So that's really the key thing, is that you have to be, once you know what your limit is for that item, is then being strict about what comes in and out, and not extending beyond that if you want to try and remain in control of it. So on to tip number 4, which is organisation and having a system in place for all of your things. And this area was probably the biggest kind of penny dropping moment for me when I realised, actually, I think I can manage this and it's going to be manageable, ongoing, that I can sort of keep control of all of these things that I have and know where they are. And actually being able to see everything that I had and locate it and know what it was really good for my creativity and motivation and enthusiasm to sew. It unearthed projects that I'd forgotten about and gave me a chance to be like, actually, am I going to finish this, or do I just have to accept that that project wasn't meant to be, and you move on to another purpose in life. And really, I think it just made me feel a bit better about all of the stuff that I had, and just gave me a bit of sense of relief, really, that I thought, no, I do have a lot, but I know what it all is, and I've got my reasons for keeping it. I've been through it all and I've made a conscious decision that I'm going to keep these things, and it does just make you feel a bit better about it all. So within my fabric storage kind of area, or my cupboard that I've got, I use some drawer dividers from IKEA that I could use to sort of section out different types. So I had like a bit for cuffings and a bit for ribbons and other sort of notions, just so it was easy to find all of those things. And then I grouped my fabrics into fabrics that were more sort of like interior stuff, fabrics that were for me, fabrics that I would make kids things with. So you could choose whatever way you wanted to organise your space, whether that's by fabric type or fabric size, whatever you think is going to be most useful for you. But knowing some sort of system that you can like access something or find it if you're looking for it, just makes it all a lot more manageable. Also, in my sewing area, I've got one of the pegboards from IKEA, so I tend to keep smaller items in there and use the little boxes and drawers. So I've got bobbins, machine feet, machine needles, so they've all just got their own home or their own place there. You could use something like this thread stand that I've got here to act like a bit of a display for threads as well, so it can look nice in a sewing area if you're able to have one set up all the time, and then it just means it's easy to see all the different colours you've got, stop you from buying duplicates. And then I keep all of my haberdashery and my sort of tools and equipment and that kind of thing in this wooden trug, which I've had for years. I think I got it at a sort of flea market or vintage market or something years ago, and it does have quite a lot of sentimental value. It was one that I took on the sewing bee with me all of those years ago, so it kind of reminds me of that as well. But the other thing that I found really useful, which allowed me to sort of, if I needed to kind of quickly tidy up the space, I would be able to do that, is having a designated area. So it was another cupboard for me, a shelf in another cupboard that was all the projects that I'm currently working on. So if you know, normally the project I'm working on at the moment would probably stay out on the ironing board, to be honest, but if I did need to, you know, if I wanted to tidy up the whole space and put everything away, I've then just got a space that I can put work in progress projects on. And I've got a few other things in there as well, and I tend to keep them in these prim boxes that are like sort of stackable boxes, so it would be like a project for each box. And then I've also got a little area for my PDF patterns in there, so I sectioned mine out into different types of patterns. So I've got woven tops, jersey tops, bottoms, dresses and coats and jackets, and then I alphabetised them within those categories. So it just meant it was really easy for me to be able to go and get a pattern. Before, I just had them all together in a big mash, and whenever I wanted a pattern I literally had to look through hundreds and hundreds of patterns. So yeah, it just being able to access things quickly, it just does really help the sort of flow and the creativity of all the sewing process, and I definitely do feel better, and sort of I guess I do feel less guilty about the amount of stuff I had, because I feel like I'm in control of it. So I hope that all of those tips have helped you. If you do give any of them a go, please do let me know if you find them useful. If you've got any questions, you can just leave them in the comments. But thanks so much for watching. If you've not subscribed to my channel already, then just remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!